Hey girl, it's Monique Renewed. Welcome back to another video. I hope your mind, body, and soul are in one flow and one rhythm today. So today's video topic of discussion is something that kind of sparked this whole transition of mine, and is how limited beliefs can shape your view about God. And this is what I wish I knew when I was starting my journey out with God and my relationship with Him, that I brought in a lot of my limited beliefs from childhood and teenage, adolescent years and adulthood into that relationship, and how it miscued my perception about God. So if you have trouble trusting God, if you feel stuck in life, this could be the hidden reason why you are currently struggling right now. And I'm going to give you the hints and tips to how to overcome this. First, we're going to go over the symptoms, how this is affecting your life, the root causes, how you develop these beliefs in the first place, and how to get healing from this. Because girl, we are not trying to stay stuck in the same cycle over and over again. We are trying to move up and move forward. So girl, the primary way to know if you are suffering from a mother or father wound, or even both, is that you have this misconception that if something bad happens to you in life, it's because it's a divine punishment from God. So you have a fear or a guilt of always doing something wrong, or you fear always getting in trouble. You think that God has favorites. Somehow He's blessing everybody else but you, and He's somehow forgotten you, neglected you, or left you in the dust. You say that you trust God with your mouth, but you find it very difficult to trust God with your whole heart. You will say, oh, He can have this area of my life, but He cannot control other areas of my life because that control is left up to my hands. You have trouble surrendering. This is a telltale sign that you have mother and father wounds that you are projecting onto God, and somehow you might be even blaming Him for these wounds or for the way that you're acting, when it is essentially not His fault. The symptoms: you fear getting punished. If you did something wrong and something bad happens to you, it's because you're getting punished for it, which that is not the way that life works, aka Job. These symptoms that I just went over can stem from childhood and how you were treated by your mother and father. Now, when we grow up, of course, they are going to instill their belief systems into us, because that is how they shape us in a way that they themselves view the world. However, all of these beliefs may not be correct or may not work for your particular life, and it's your job to deconstruct and to renew your mind and to transform your life. You may look at it from a victim mindset, like, oh, why is it my job to have to fix myself, or why is it my responsibility? Instead, think of it from a victor mindset. I get to restructure and reshape my beliefs in order for it to fit my life and to shape my future the way that I want it to. So examples of childhood trauma that you might be exhibiting to this very day include neglect, abuse, and a lack of boundaries. Now, a lack of boundaries is one of the main indicators that you have a father wound. Think of what a father represents. A father represents the rock and the fence of a household. He is what let good things in and keeps bad things out. He is your defender. Okay, if somebody's messing with you, you know your dad's gonna come around the corner and get him. Okay, he is often the discipliner. He'll be the one to dish out the discipline. He'll be the one to scout out your boyfriend and say, no, that's not the one for you. So a father represents the masculine protector and defender. So for example, if you have fear of men, if you cannot say no, you can't set boundaries, you can't speak up or advocate for yourself, you tend to have a lot of ideas, but you can't execute them, you procrastinate a lot, or you have a lot of resistance when it comes to actually executing and producing things, that is a sign of a father wound. Other things can include you're overly dependent on men, like you rely on men to do everything for you that you can do yourself, or you're overly independent from men. You think that men are not necessary, that you borderline hate men and think that men should disappear, when in actuality is that there would not be women in the world without men, and vice versa. We need each other, and that's what creates this harmony, this perfect harmony and complementary relationship, is when you have both sides to make it whole. So the telltale sign that you have a mother wound is that you cannot trust women. And I want you to think about your inner thoughts about women. I literally had to write this down. Okay, what are my thoughts about men and what are my thoughts about women in a negative form? And for this, I realized, yes, a mistrust in women. You think either from your own experiences that women are out to get you, that they can't be trusted, that they're sneaky or conniving. You think they might be jealous. So another big point is that you have an inner critic voice. a voice that's always judging either a situation or someone. Every time you see someone, you always have to make judgments about them. It's always comparing and contrasting. Other symptoms include always complaining. You cannot rest. You cannot just receive. You always have to be on the go, always have to do something. It's hard for you to just surrender, to relinquish control over to someone else, because you always have to be the one in control. There's a lot of emotional instability, a lot of chaos, a lot of anger or jealousy or insecurity, or you feel like you have to emulate someone else because you can't be comfortable being yourself. You're always criticizing your looks. This could be your skin tone, your hair, your age. There's a lot of ageism, or you have a fear of getting older. There's always a need to constantly defend or protect yourself. Highly offendable, or always on high alert or stress. These are indicators of mother wounds. So like I said, you really have to look back into your childhood and the way you grew up and your upbringing to kind of unveil where these beliefs came from and how you're projecting them onto God. How I did this was, of course, take a look into the most dominant male and female figures into your life. For me, it was my biological parents. For you, it could be someone else, such as somebody that you grew up with, maybe your grandma, your aunt. So it will be unique depending on the person and your upbringing. And most likely their limited beliefs were imposed onto you and created your sets of beliefs. Of course, you can also draw this from school, what was told to you as a child by other people like your peers or your teachers. And we know the cycle will continue unless you make a conscious effort to break the cycle, because it is generational and it will be passed down to your children and their children and their children until you finally decide that I'm going to be the one to break this cycle. So when I took a look into my childhood, my parents were divorced when I was 6 years old. So that created a household of one single independent mother, and you know how that can be. She was growing up in her Caribbean mindset. It was a lot of strictness, and discipline was often dealt out harshly. And if there's no other male figure in the house to help to raise me at that point of age, she had to take on a lot of that responsibility on herself. So it can create a much more harsher sense of control. And also on top of that, my mother had me at an older age. So that kind of influenced my perspective on age and ageism, and how I felt like a lot of our struggles came from either a lack of financial stability, because we had to rely on just her income, and her age. The age and the generational gap created a lot of misunderstandings and unable to relate to each other on a different level. Because if she's a boomer and I'm a millennial, that's a big age difference. I'm going to want to do certain things that she probably does not care for or does not like. So my mother wounds stem from a wound of abuse and perfectionism. So I had to show up a certain way in order to be accepted. If I did not show up to a particular standard, I was not accepted and I was dealt with harshly. And I projected those beliefs onto God. So that made relationships very transactional from my end. I had to perform in order to be accepted. So it was almost like I was treating my relationship with God in that same manner. If I do this, if I tithe, if I fast, if I pray consistently, that means God will bless me. If that's not the case. Relationships with God is not transactional. It is unconditional. You do these things out of love, not out of fear. Another wound was restriction. Because there was a lot of restriction in my household, I did not feel free to be myself. If I was myself, or I spoke out, or if I advocated, it was often left with me being punished for that. So I had to withdraw and hide myself a lot of times in order to feel safe. So now it's telling my brain it is unsafe to be myself. So that is why I grew up being quiet, because it was a defense mechanism. People would often call me timid or shy, or she doesn't speak, but there was a deeper reason for those things, because I felt shame for being my true self, or for speaking out, or for stating my own opinions. And unfortunately, I did carry that into adulthood. Like I said, I've done a lot of inner work to kind of remove those layers and unpack that and to be my true self that God made me to be. But unfortunately, I did also impose those beliefs onto God, because I felt like I could not express myself freely if I had something going on inside. I felt like I had to hide those emotions. And that sounds really silly when you think about it, is hiding emotions from God when He knows everything anyways. But that is how I grew up. So now I did not feel safe or comfortable telling God how I truly felt in certain situations, or how I even felt about Him. I had to hold in that anger or whatever other emotions that I was feeling, because my brain was telling me it's not safe, that I was probably going to get punished for it if I told God how I really felt. But like I said, again, that is not true. These are limiting beliefs and these are lies. So in order to be in any type of relationship, especially if it's going to be an unconditional one, you have to feel free to be yourself. Next is your father wounds. So taking examples from my life, like I said, my parents were divorced when I was 6 and my mother had sole custody of me. My father was ordered by the court to have custody of me of the weekends, but in my mom's rage, she would not allow it. So every time my father did come to get me, she would make a fuss and argue, and I ended up not seeing him most of the times. So after a while, I didn't even see him on weekends, even though he was granted that permission. So you could see how that kind of shifts the dynamic. Now I have an absent father, and I'm not saying by his fault, but that's just how the tables have turned. So what kind of limited beliefs does an absent father create? That God is not a provider, that he's not there for you, that you have to make it out on your own, that you have to do everything by yourself. And this came in a lot with a lot of projects that I was doing, like building my website or launching my book or creating my business. I often felt like I was doing this all by myself and that God wasn't helping me, but that wasn't true. It was that survival mode that I was running off of replay over and over again. But if you sit down and take pause, you will realize that God is always helping you. He's always putting resources in front of you, but you might miss it because you're hyper focused on doing this alone, because that's how you grew up, was doing things alone. On top of that, as a child, they call it a lock key. I'll put the correct terminology here, but when I heard it, I was like, oh my gosh, I did not know that was a term for it. So basically, if you ever grew up as a kid and you had to go to school by yourself or you had to come home by yourself, there was no one in the household because your parents were constantly working. I think they call it like a lock key child or something like that. And I was like, wow, that's exactly how I grew up. And that produces feelings of neglect and abandonment. Children should not have to go to school and there's no one there. They should not have to come home from school and then there's no one there. Unfortunately, a lot of our US system, and maybe this happens in a lot of countries too, where both of the parents have to go out and work in order to provide for, which I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but you see how it produces a sense of abandonment for children. So basically I had to care for myself. There would be, times where my mom would try to find a babysitter and pay them like $10 here or there to try to, watch over me. But a lot of times I miss school because I can't be in charge of trying to get myself to school and get myself home every day and trying to memorize bus routes and complicated stuff like that at 9 years old. So this produces beliefs that God will not provide for me. He will not be there for me. I have to do everything by myself and that I cannot trust him. But you see how the cycle goes? It also produces feelings of resentment and anger towards God because you think that he's not there for you, when actuality is your limiting beliefs that's creating this perpetual cycle. Now, I want you to pay key attention to this if you have a father wound that is related to absence, because this directly correlates to how you view money and resources. Do you think money is not abundant? Do you think resources are not abundant? Do you think help is not abundant? That is a direct correlation of your father wound. So next, as a father that's supposed to be a protector and a fence, I had no boundaries for myself. So because he was not there, there was no protector or shield or fence to draw in the good stuff and to keep the bad stuff out. Those are your boundaries. This is why a male figure is so important in young women's life, because they are the ones to tell you, no, do not date this type of man, because they could see that from men to men, right? Avoid this type of man. They come to your offense if someone is trying to pick at you, such as any bullies from school. They will fly to that school in 2 seconds, and if they see a big tall man, they're gonna scatter, okay? And they won't mess with you again, because bullies, they know who to make an easy target. If they don't see anyone will come to your defense, like a big brother or something, or some type of male figure. And I'm not saying women can't defend their children either, but it makes a difference when a man does it. I'm not gonna hold you. Because I remember one time when I was younger, some boy, he had bounced a basketball off of my head. I got my brother, he came outside, and I've never seen that boy again, okay? There is a difference when it comes to male being a defense for women. They know how to defend you against invaders and people with ill intentions. And this could be the very reason why you yourself lack boundaries, you cannot advocate for yourself, or you find it incredibly difficult to say no. And this can be a reason why you can be prone to attracting people who test your limits and test your boundaries and constantly cross them. It's because of this open wound right here. Now, this can be projected onto God when you feel like God is not safe, when you feel like he cannot protect you, he won't defend you. Such as if you're constantly praying out of fear and anxieties. I used to do this all the time, where every time before I left the house, I would pray that I wouldn't get into a car accident, when it's really my fears that's leading that instead of trust. Why do I constantly every 5 minutes have to be saying this in my head, and I can't just trust God that he'll protect me? So do you see life as being safe or constantly dangerous? Are you always scared and on the defense, or are you relaxed and not in survival mode and constantly trying to think of 50 exit strategies and this person might harm me, that person might harm me, constantly on edge and filled with anxiety because you don't see the world as being safe. You see it as being fearsome and dangerous. That could be you exhibiting a father wound. Okay, girl, now how to heal from this, because this is not something you have to carry with you for the rest of your life. Okay, I promise you. This is something that you can release, let go, and start to live a new, brand new life and have a healthy relationship with others and with God, because this will affect your relationship. So the number one most powerful tool that you will need in order to release these father and mother wounds is forgiveness. Yes. It sounds simple, but forgiveness could be so hard, especially when you've been living with the same wounds in life, the same thoughts, the same beliefs, and the same patterns over and over again. Forgiveness simply means to let it go. Forgiveness means to release the people and the situations that have inflicted these wounds on you. So for example, if you're always crying about a certain situation, or you find yourself being triggered constantly, always offended by something, always taking things personally, that is a sign that you need to release forgiveness. And how you do this is that you have to commit to almost stop thinking about it. For me, it took a while, because every time I would get triggered by a thought or a situation, it would spiral me emotionally. And that would result in like binge eating or comfort eating, doom scrolling, anything I could do to try to avoid those emotions when it's really something that you have to face. So what I would do, I would like cry it out, scream it out. I would journal, I would pray to God about it. And he will send you encouragement through scriptures, through devotionals, through anything really. And you have to pay attention to when he speaks to you, and you have to let that soak in and meditate on it, so that these true words, his truth, can begin to take root, so that these seeds can grow and form new beliefs in your mind. And you can start to dismantle these lies that were once your old beliefs, that you literally grip and hold on to tightly because it's all that you ever known and it's your comfort zone. See, your brain likes comfort, and that's why it's so hard to kind of release these situations, because you have become so accustomed to them. It's hard to change, it's hard to grow, it's hard to step into something new. But this will literally transform your life if you do this. Stop ruminating on the same people, the same situations that have hurt you for the last 10 years. It's time to let it go and to move on to brand new things. But you can't step forward into new things if you're still holding on to old baggage. It's like trying to carry, all these things on your back. It's weighing you down. So forgiveness means to simply just let it go and to commit to letting it go day by day. It doesn't happen overnight. For some people it can, but for me, I find that it's a process to forgive and to let go completely. And you know that you have truly forgiven when you don't think about the situation as much as you used to, or it doesn't arouse any negative emotion. If the thought does come by, it doesn't spiral you into tears, it doesn't trigger you. You get less offended by things and by people. You're not constantly like trying to defend yourself or trying to make up arguments in your head about what you shoulda, coulda, woulda said to somebody. You let those things go and you move on freely, lightweight, and without baggage. So next, it's time to reprogram your mind. As I mentioned previously, when God gives you the truth, when he implants the truth in you, you have to hold on more tightly to that than the lies and the limiting beliefs that you were believing. So meditating on scripture. What does scripture say? How can you see women in light of scripture? So from the stories in the Bible, such as Ruth, and there are countless of women who have been pioneers for God. They are strong, bold, wise, resourceful, comforting, loyal. That's how you begin to renew your mind. You begin to implant the good seeds and rip out those weeds and those bad seeds that have been making amok in your garden. So if you think that, oh, women are jealous of me, guess what? That's all you are going to see in life is women that are jealous of you, or pinpoint every little thing and make it conform to your beliefs and thought patterns, because that is what your brain is scanning for. And this is coming from your limited view and mindset, and it's not necessarily the truth. So how I did this, I began to remother myself or reparent myself in the mother form. I would begin to take certain characteristics of God that I thought that a mother should have and implant that into my mind. So like I said, wisdom, loyalty, strong, pioneers, resourceful, foresight, joy, peace, good advisors, helpers, caring. Those are the beliefs I began to implant, and guess what? Then your life will start to shape and conform to that. You will start to see women as that. You will start to heal those mother wounds. You will start to have better relationships with women. You will start to form sisterhoods and bonds, because these are now your new beliefs and thought patterns, which also affects how you view life and your behaviors. And you will also begin to stop sabotaging your relationships once you do heal from these wounds. So the same thing with your father wounds. How do you see God in a father aspect? A provider, a protector. He sets good boundaries for my benefit, not for my harm. If he does not want me to have something because it is good for me not to have it, not because he's trying to control or restrict me. He's a gentleman. He does not harm. He does not inflict pain. He does not violate. He does not cross boundaries. He keeps his word. He's strong. He's loyal, and he's a defender. Begin to learn that it is safe to trust men, it is safe to trust women, and most importantly, it is safe to trust God. It is safe to relinquish control onto God, to surrender, to relax, to rest, to let him pick up the slack, and to let him pick up the burden, because he cares for you. Okay, girl, we went over the symptoms of what having a father and mother wound can look like, how it affects your relationships and your life, your view on life, how this is the key reason why you probably do not trust God, or the very reason why you have limiting beliefs about God, and how to remove these limiting beliefs. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye. Miscued? Is miscued a word? Hey Siri. Is miscued a word?
Yes, miscued is a word.
My mother wounds, why do you say wounds?